Amos, it's great to have you in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for joining me.
It's great to always be with you, especially here in UAE.
Walk me through how you see the current administration in Lebanon. Are they getting it right?
I think first of all, I think it's a great improvement. I think that we have a president, we have a new prime minister who is really committed to the reform agenda. I think we're in a really tough spot because we had the ceasefire, which is still holding, but it has a lot of stress on it. And I think that the Trump administration came in with both its envoys to Lebanon, Ambassador Tom Barrack and Morgan Ortagus, and trying to move things along, which I think is the right, to show the focus on moving it along. But there are two parties here, Israel and Lebanon. There's so much potential for what could actually happen based on the regional dynamics. The president of Lebanon is openly talking about wanting to have a new kind of relationship with Israel. That is remarkable. It's remarkable. And if you just said that 2 years ago, it would be impossible to imagine. But that offer is not being taken up at the moment. And so Israel was supposed to withdraw as the Lebanese armed forces take over positions. They're still in 5 positions there. I think what needs to happen is Israel needs to understand that the muscular approach and the more pressure sometimes gets to a point of diminishing returns and counterproductive.
And they're there.
And I think we're nearing there right now. The narrative in Lebanon changed so dramatically since the ceasefire, which is, why do we need Hezbollah choking Lebanon? Why do we need this parasite that is called Hezbollah on our state? We want to improve the state and we want to get things better. We don't want to go back to war. And so the threat was no longer Israel. The threat was Hezbollah. But with the continued attacks and not giving the government even a little bit of an inch.
Time to breathe.
And let's withdraw some of our forces and let the Lebanese armed forces take hold. Mm-hmm. And you can't blame them for not doing things when you're not giving them the opportunity to do it. Mm. And so I think I would encourage both sides to figure out, okay, how do we not slide back into conflict and threatening rhetoric, which is how we started this whole thing, and rather think about how do we move to the land boundary and define a border. We did it with the maritime border. We can do it with the land boundary. Then we can have a non-aggression pact, because then we say, okay, we have a border. We don't need to be enemies anymore. And from there, you can move it step by step into a much better place for both countries. I hope we get there. This is the first time that I'm really worried about where we are.
When you hear the special envoy, Tom Barrack, saying that Lebanon is a failed state, is that a mistake in your mind?
Look, I try, I was the envoy, I don't want to second guess what other people do.
But is it helpful?
Look, Lebanon has enormous economic trouble and challenges. And I think that ending the war is only one step. And yes, we're focused on disarming Hezbollah, but instead of looking at what they're not doing right, I think we as the international community have a responsibility to come and say, after the 2006 war, the rebuilding was Hezbollah and Iran. And if you don't want them to do it, we have to come in as the international community with real money and a real approach to reconstruction. And we're paying a lot of attention to reconstruction in Gaza and putting all these conferences together, and everybody's talking about it. But we need to do it for Lebanon too. We need to show the people in the South that the international community doesn't only show up when there's bombings, that we also show up to rebuild the farms, to rebuild the roads, to rebuild electricity. To get
Otherwise, there's a vacuum, and
vacuums are never filled in the Middle East by good people.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we should focus on at the moment.
Do you think that the Hezbollah narrative, in that they're still on the back foot, is that the right one? Because I hear conflicting information. And the Trump administration says they're rebuilding. They consistently say the money's still flowing, the weapons are still flowing. What's your take?
Hezbollah has 2 strengths, traditionally. One is its military might, and the second is its political strength in the country. They are politically at the weakest moment that they've been, maybe not as weak as they were 6 months ago, but they're weak. The country doesn't want them. Militarily, they are, the way I would define it is, they're too weak to fight Israel, but they're strong enough to fight Lebanon. So I agree with the position of a gradual disarming of Hezbollah. The government took a vote in Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah. That is unbelievable. That's a great moment. Now we have to implement it. But don't put the kind of pressure on the system that breaks it and leads us to a civil war, but put the kind of pressure that says, okay, what's a reasonable timeline of expectations? How do we say, wait, Hezbollah, you committed under the ceasefire to have no presence and heavy weapons south of the Litani region. Okay, let's implement that. Long-range missiles, why do they have them? They don't need them. Let's do that. Then let's go on to medium range. But let's not say that in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to do a complete disarming. I don't know where we've done that outside of the FARC in Colombia. There's not much.
You don't see it as realistic.
Let's be realistic of what we can achieve. The best way to combat them is not to focus singularly on the disarming of Hezbollah, but to do it in a dual track of, yes, disarm Hezbollah, but use the weakening of their position in the government and the country to also build out the economy, to bring in investment, to support the Lebanese armed forces with having the international community come in with better weapons, better training, better vehicles, better salaries.
Yeah.
And encourage a rebuilding of society. When Lebanon is prosperous, Hezbollah is weak, and its other proxies. When they're poor, they come in and say, with very little money, their dollar goes very far.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have a lot more money because Iran is kind of broke. But the dollar goes far in Lebanon, especially when the economy is depressed. So I say the same message that I say to the Lebanese government, I would say to the Israeli government. If you push them and more bombings and more violence and more pressure, then there's no investment and there's no prosperity and Hezbollah strengthens. And then you're just playing the same cycle of the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And you're squandering a moment here of the ceasefire in Gaza, talk about normalization in the region. You have so much going for them at the moment. Don't squander it in Lebanon.
Switching gears, we heard a lot of conversation today about we are in an energy arms race. Do you see that to be the case?
I think you mean with China. I think we're in a place where we're in a competition that you have every few generations about who's going to control the next several generations. And we're in that moment now. It happened after World War II. It happened, I think, at the collapse of the Soviet Union, where in the 1990s, or 1993 to 2000, was really set up the United States for the new era, because we had the tech boom in Silicon Valley that didn't exist in 1990, but was huge by the time it was 2000. The Dayton Accords were America's sort of presence in the world. So we had a moment in time that defined America for the next 30 years. I think we're there now. Who will dominate the rulemaking and the world order when it comes to not just the AI frontier chips and AI, but how do we organize ourselves around it? What are the rules of the road for the use of AI and for the investment? That's I don't like to put it into military terms. I prefer this is straight up competition. The Chinese are using all the leverages they have, critical minerals and all the other things that they can control, and the United States is trying to do the same thing. Our capital markets are the secret sauce of the United States. They always have been. We have a free market that enables innovation. That has also been our secret sauce. And I think that usually wins. So now you have the rest of the world has to organize based on these two polars. I think the United States wins by default unless we do things that push everybody away. So
are we doing those things?
I always find it weird for a Democrat to criticize a Republican administration for intervening in the market too much, taking 10% of companies and so on. I think the capital markets and free market and innovation is what we should do well. I think the far left went out against innovation and against success and against the tech companies. You don't have to always be for everything they're doing. They're doing a lot of things that I don't like either. But by and large, this is what makes America great, is that whenever for the last 150 years, whenever there was a moment in time of inflection points, we win because of innovation. And I can disagree with Elon Musk all I want on a whole bunch of issues, and I do, but I think he's one of the greatest things that's happened to the United States. If you look about what we're doing in space and what we're doing in technology and electric vehicles, right? We wouldn't have an industry without it. So I think we can have complicated approaches to companies and innovation as long as the baseline is right, which is we support it when we want to enable it. And I think what you're seeing, the partnership with the UAE, the partnership with the Gulf as a whole, where people want to put their money, it's in the United States. You look at the dollars and cents of how much money is flowing into U.S. innovation versus how much is flowing into other countries. It's not even a close call. This is probably the most lopsided it's ever been. Of everything is flowing into the United States. And so I think that's a good thing for the United States. And I think we should continue to do whatever we can to support that while also supporting our values.
We talk so much about, energy resources, how energy is going to be used to fuel AI. It is going to hit people's pocketbook when it comes to electricity prices. Do you think the public is ready for that? Is the messaging there in your mind, or is this going to be a real slap in the face?
I think the undercurrent that we're not seeing in the media yet, and in government and in our politics yet, but is already happening at the grassroots, is what the adage of every president, I've worked for a few, where gasoline price is always the big thing. Neon lights, you drive down any road in America and you see the price of gasoline. I think that's going to start becoming the price of electricity, where people say, wait a minute, we're building all these announcements about data centers. Why is there a tariff increase on my electricity bills? Now, they don't see it every day when they're driving. They see it at the end of the month, but the bill is starting to go up.
Yeah.
So I think what has to happen is the tech companies and the investors, and now I left government, I'm more on the investor side, we have to be sensitive to that, because data centers are large, they're loud, and they're very power hungry.
Yeah.
Where we can turn this all into an advantage is our grid is old, our generation capacity of electricity is old, our fleet is old. So if this now has all these technology companies are going to fuel a massive investment that is non-governmental, so coming from the private sector, and investing into building new power plants, new transmission lines that are modernized and efficient.
Infrastructure development.
That is a
jobs.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's the backbone of the next 100 years. We have one of our challenges that a lot of our infrastructure is aging.
Yes.
Because our golden era infrastructure was the 1930s.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's a good thing, but we have to do it in a way that we're not saying that part of the economy gets supply of reliable electricity and everybody else has to pay for it.
Yeah.
I think they should pay for it, and the money's there.
Yeah.
So how do we figure that out?
The companies should pay for it.
The companies should pay for the increase of the infrastructure, because they're going to make the profit off of it.
Yeah.
And therefore, the people and communities that live nearby should not have an increase in electricity prices. So there has to be some kind of conversation that we haven't had to have in dozens of years about how to manage the cost of electricity not falling to local communities.
Yeah.
And I think we haven't figured it out yet. And I think that both the industry and the government need to figure that out.
How do you see, it is messaging. A large part of this, obviously, is messaging. How do you see this impacting the midterms?
So we'll see how, it will depend on how things develop over the next few months. In other words, we've seen a few utilities and private power generation companies announcing hikes of electricity prices. What I want to see is how many people running for office, and I see it now in both parties. At the very local level, county, city, state, running and saying, I'm not going to allow data centers, or I'm not going to allow electricity prices. Now in the private sector where I'm investing into this sector, I think my call to my colleagues and to people in the companies is to be very attuned to it, because this is one of those things where if you see it in the midterms, it's too late.
Yeah.
And we miss, then we're screwed.
Yeah.
So we have, because the crisis, if it comes, is much harder to undo than prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
And the preventing is some of the messaging. One, we have to be responsible for water resources. We have to we're going to make sure that prices don't go up for consumers. And we're going to do something about the fact that this has to be sustainable for environmentally, and that's also the noise and other things. So we have to take care of our land so we don't go around states in a few years from now, it's covered with these big data center boxes.
Yes.
But we need the data centers, and we need the extra power, right? So it's turning against it is the wrong move too.
Yeah.
Because what will fuel us as the greatest economy in the world for years to come is if we continue to win the technology and innovation and AI race. So, and you can't win that without more power and without more data centers.
Yeah.
So it's about a balance. And I think the rhetoric on the far left and the far right is non-pragmatic. It's putting these issues into ideological terms instead of practical and pragmatic. That comes with energy, where the far left says, I don't need oil and gas, we should just do renewables. And the far right says, wind is terrible and get rid of solar and we should just do oil and gas and coal. Both sides are wrong. And they lead our government, whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration, to be in non-pragmatic places. We should be in an energy addition because we need all the power we can have. And we also deserve to have a cleaner environment, and both can be done. And by the way, renewables are part of the future. That's part of innovation. So renewables plus batteries together with the natural gas, that's what our power system is going to look like. But we shouldn't get pulled into these extremes that are, both sides don't listen to science and don't listen to what is pragmatic and practical.
Yeah.
And we have to get past
We're just
that.
looking at the bills.
We're looking at the bills.
We're here at the ENACT Summit, just ahead of ADIPEC, a major U.S. delegation here. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I saw you on a regular basis when you were special advisor for energy for President Biden. But I never saw Jennifer Granholm. I never saw the U.S. Secretary of Energy in this part of the world. Do you regret that?
I don't regret. Look, you should ask her the question of
What she was doing.
What her travels in the Middle East or not. But my first travels when I joined the administration were to the Middle East and to Europe. At some point,
I saw you all the time.
Recognize that we need allies and we need partners. The UAE and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, this region has been a good partner to the United States and will continue to be. That doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything. In fact, we often disagreed. They want higher prices sometimes. We want lower prices. We have disagreements, but that's okay. That's what partners do. We don't agree with Europe on everything, and yet we work with them. That's how we get ahead. I think it's good that the administration is here in a big way. I think that we had other people coming to the administration from the Biden administration here on a regular basis. We had a very strong relationship. We built the foundations of the G42 and Microsoft deal that was here. We got the first deal on chips to come to UAE, build out data centers in Saudi Arabia. I think those are all, President Biden went to Saudi Arabia as well, and it was controversial at the time, but a right move, I believe. So I think that
He went finally.
I went the summer of 2022, I think. So I think it was less than halfway through the administration, and spent a couple of days there with both the Crown Prince and had a GCC summit. And we had a very strong relationship historically as a country, and I don't think that we should make it political. I think that we have some disagreements, and if we raise them and address them directly and say what our concerns are, whether it's about AI or chips or defense or energy, my experience has been in UAE and Saudis that when I raise the issues directly with the leadership, with my counterparts, and you have a good relationship, they either explain it or they address it every time. If we don't talk and don't communicate and just stew in our criticism, then it doesn't go very well. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's good for any administration to send their people here, I think regularly, to have a strong relationship. It benefits, I don't think that we should have a good relationship because it's good for UAE. I think we should have a good relationship because it's good for the United States.
UAE has a very, very diverse relationship. You know, we have very strong strategic relationship with the United States, of course, and business relationships with the United States. But at the same time, they are a crossroads. They are, taking investment from China. They're working with Russia in other areas. In your mind, is that good or bad for the United States?
I think we should have a partnership with UAE that recognize that they are not the United States. They have their own interests. And we should discuss our interests. And they should have a relationship with whoever they feel they need to. In certain areas, we can have the right to come and say, listen, just like in anything, on this issue, it's binary.
Us or them.
On this issue, it's us or them. On other issues, do what you want.
Yeah.
And the us or them doesn't mean I'm your enemy if you choose them. It's just, I can't work with you. That's the same in the private sector. In certain areas, on this, if I sell you my technology, we have an agreement that you can't share my technology with anybody else.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're my competitors. Not because China's my enemy, but because they're my competitor. So if you want to work with me, great. I want to work with you. So tell me. But we have to accept that you can't do that on every issue. I don't think we should be dictating or expecting some kind of loyalty oaths.
Yeah.
We should have a partnership that recognizes that other countries have interests. And they're not identical to ours, but they should be compatible with ours.
Yeah.
And if you're compatible with my overall view of the world, we should work together. And if we're not compatible, then we're not going to work together. And it's as simple as that. It's not personal.
Amos, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for joining me.
It's great to be with you.